You think you know your neighbors. The man watering his plants each morning. The woman who gives you a polite smile in the elevator. The child who plays hopscotch in the hallway. They all seem harmless, until they're not. What if one of them is hiding a terrifying secret? What if behind their front door is something sinister waiting for the right moment to strike? Welcome to 3 true stories of bizarre neighbors that turned dangerous. These aren't fictional tales or exaggerated myths. These are true horror stories, unsettling accounts of creepy stories, terrifying tales, and eerie encounters that began with something as simple as a knock next door. If Home Alone horror stories for sleep, or true scary horror stories are your thing, then hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. You're about to dive into a darkness that might be closer than you think. Now, dim the lights, grab your headphones, and remember, it's not always the strangers who are dangerous. Sometimes, it's your neighbor. This story is about the insect collector. Kyle was just a quiet guy in a quiet Portland high-rise. He didn't make noise. Didn't party. Didn't even have guests over. Life was simple. Then Leonard moved into Unit 5C. He was thin, jittery, always wearing long sleeves even in summer. He introduced himself once, said he was an entomologist. Bug scientist. Harmless enough, right? Until Kyle started noticing strange things. His Amazon packages arriving slightly torn. His front door handle sticky. And then, the insects. At first, it was just a few beetles by the windowsill. Then it became dozens, unusual species with glossy shells and twitching antennae. One crawled out of his toothpaste tube. Kyle tried brushing it off until the night he heard tapping through the shared wall. Every night. Same pattern. Tap, 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 tap. Like a code. One night, Kyle tapped back. The tapping stopped. Then came the scratching. Desperate for answers, Kyle pressed his ear to the wall. A low voice whispered, "They like you." He set up a hidden camera to record overnight. What it caught made his blood run cold, Leonard entering Kyle's apartment using a copied key, crawling on all fours, and placing jars under his bed, jars filled with bugs. Kyle called the building manager, but Leonard was gone. Moved out in the middle of the night. That should have been the end. But it wasn't. Kyle kept waking up at 3:33 a.m., sleep paralysis pinning him in place. Watching Leonard's face emerge from the darkness, whispering, "The colony has chosen you." The worst part? The infestation followed him to his new apartment. One morning, Kyle opened his sock drawer and found a message formed by insect legs, "Still here." Some haunted stories don't involve ghosts. Sometimes, it's something crawling under your skin. But the story only grew darker. Kyle started experiencing terrifying paranormal phenomena, his lights flickering wildly, his smoke alarm going off at 3:33 a.m. for no reason, and his thermostat displaying the word "hive" instead of a temperature. It felt like his home was becoming part of some horrific urban legend, but this wasn't just a tale. It was a true horror story happening in real time. When he tried moving again, the movers refused to enter his bedroom. They claimed it felt wrong, and one of them said they saw a figure crouched in the closet, whispering in a garbled language. Kyle knew the truth, Leonard had left something behind. Not just the bugs, but a part of himself. A dark, crawling presence now fused to his very existence. No matter where he went, the sensation of being watched never left. Kyle sought help from a spiritualist known for handling haunted tales and eerie experiences. She called what was following him a colony curse, a form of spiritual infestation that spreads through psychological vulnerability. She performed a cleansing ritual. Burned sage. Sprinkled salt around his apartment. For one night, it seemed to work. Then he woke to find thousands of tiny ants spelling out the word "No" on his ceiling. His nightmares escalated into full-blown nightmare tales. He would wake up in total darkness, his limbs paralyzed, only to feel something squirm across his chest, 6 legs, mandibles, a low chittering in his ear. It wasn't just sleep paralysis anymore. It was contact. Something was physically touching him, violating the boundary between dream and reality. Kyle now lives in near isolation, covered every vent with steel mesh, bathes in vinegar to repel insects, and has removed every mirror and reflective surface. But it doesn't matter. The infestation is inside him. Not in his skin, deeper. He hears the buzzing now when he closes his eyes. They whisper in clicks and taps. We are one. Some true scary horror stories end in escape. Kyle's story is still crawling toward its conclusion. This story is about the girl upstairs. Maria lived in a modest apartment in Queens with her dog, Max. After 12-hour shifts at the hospital, all she wanted was peace and quiet. She got the opposite. The unit above hers had been vacant for over a year. The landlord said it was under renovation. Sealed shut. But every night at 3:03 a.m., Maria would hear heavy footsteps directly above her bedroom. Then, giggling. High-pitched. Childlike. Max would growl at the ceiling. Whimper. Sometimes bark uncontrollably. Maria recorded the sound one night. When she played it back, layered beneath the footsteps and laughter, was a whisper, "You hear me now?" The next morning, her ceiling had new cracks, shaped like handprints. Terrified, she called the police. They pried open the upstairs unit, and what they found was straight out of a nightmare. The apartment was untouched. No furniture. No dust. Just a single mattress, a cracked hand mirror, and walls covered in black charcoal sketches. One sketch stood out, a drawing of Maria sleeping in her bed, viewed from above. Scratched into the wooden floor, "Can I come down now?" That night, Maria awoke to find Max barking wildly under the bed. She looked down, and saw a pale face staring back. The girl whispered, "I live below now." Maria moved out the next day. But now, in her new place, she still hears the footsteps. Only now, they're both above and below her. Paranormal activity doesn't need old castles or forests. Sometimes, it lives right above you. But it didn't end there. In her new apartment, Maria started seeing messages in steam on her bathroom mirror, messages like, "Still here," and "Let me in." Her sleep stories became increasingly disturbing. In one dream, she was being pulled into the ceiling by dozens of pale hands. When she woke up, her arms had faint bruises in the shape of fingerprints. The haunting had followed her, not just in memory, but in presence. She began experiencing terrifying sleep paralysis. Paralyzed at 3:03 a.m., unable to scream as she watched the same pale girl crawl out of the shadows, inching closer each night. Her eyes were pure black, her mouth too wide, and her whisper always the same, "I'm your neighbor now." Maria turned to a priest, then a medium, but nothing helped. The haunted stories weren't just in the apartment, they were inside her mind, growing louder, darker. One evening, Maria returned home to find Max missing. No open doors, no broken windows. Just a trail of soot-colored handprints leading into the wall. She fell to the floor in horror as her phone buzzed. One new voice memo. It played automatically. The voice? A child's. "He's playing upstairs with me. Come see." And faintly in the background, Max barking, then whimpering. Maria now sleeps in her car. But even there, the footsteps follow. She hears giggles in the engine static. Faces in the fogged windows. True horror stories don't end when you move. Some creepy stories stick to you like shadows, clinging, whispering, waiting. But the horror escalated again. One night, Maria fell asleep in the driver's seat, only to wake up to a tapping sound. On the windshield stood the same pale girl, smiling, unmoving, eyes glowing faintly under the streetlight. Maria screamed, turned on the engine, and drove for hours. But wherever she parked, the tapping would resume, on the window, the roof, even inside the glove compartment. The girl was no longer attached to the building, she was attached to Maria. Even in daylight, the haunting persisted. Maria saw the girl's reflection in puddles, in coffee mugs, even in her own eyes when looking in the mirror. Every surface became a potential doorway for the paranormal. She tried documenting her experiences, hoping to prove the ghost stories were real, but every photo she took showed her alone. Only in video did the truth emerge, the pale girl hovering inches behind her, mouthing words no human voice could say. Each frame like a scary animation, growing darker and more twisted. Now, Maria speaks to no one. She keeps her windows covered, sleeps with every light on, and plays white noise at full volume. But even that doesn't drown out the whisper she hears every single night at 3:03 a.m. Let me live with you again. Because some haunted tales don't care where you run. Some urban legends are real. And some neighbors never leave. This story is about the landlord below. Ben, a 24-year-old grad student, rented a basement apartment in an old house in Chicago. The landlord, Mr. Dorsey, was in his 60s, quiet, polite, and always offering cookies. At first, it was fine. Until Ben noticed his stuff was being moved. Leftovers missing. Journals slightly out of place. Laptop open when he hadn't touched it. He set up a motion camera. At 2:18 a.m., the footage showed Mr. Dorsey entering the apartment using a master key. He sat on Ben's bed. Watched him sleep. Then leaned in, and whispered something. Ben confronted him. Dorsey didn't deny it. You live in my house, he said. You're part of my collection. Ben called the police. But Dorsey owned the place, no forced entry, no charges. So Ben tried to leave. But every apartment he applied to got mysteriously taken. One leasing agent said, Mr. Dorsey called. Said you were staying. Trapped, Ben reinforced his doors. Slept with a bat. But sleep paralysis returned, worse than ever. He woke one night, unable to move, and saw Dorsey standing at the end of the bed. Naked. Bloody. Holding a Polaroid. When Ben finally escaped and moved cross-country, the packages started arriving. No return address. Just a cookie tin. Inside, a new photo of Ben sleeping. Taken from inside his new apartment. Dark secrets don't always die with distance. Some nightmare tales just change address. But the fear didn't fade. Ben started noticing signs, tiny shifts in the mirror's reflection, the faint scent of burnt sugar cookies lingering in the hallway, and more Polaroids arriving every week. His life unraveled with every photo. In one, he's shown brushing his teeth. In another, feeding his cat. All taken without his knowledge. He began suffering from insomnia and frequent sleep stories where Dorsey stood behind him, whispering strange phrases in reverse. One day, Ben awoke to find a crawlspace vent in his new apartment cracked open. Stuffed inside was a VHS tape labeled Our Time. When he played it, the screen showed static, then gradually cleared to reveal dozens of short clips, him, sleeping in different positions. Over a year's worth of footage, all taken at 2:18 a.m. His face was visible in each frame, but always with another figure in the background. Dorsey. Grinning. Closer every night. Terrified, Ben reached out to a paranormal investigator known for decoding true horror stories and urban legends. After reviewing the footage, she said something had latched onto Ben, not Dorsey, but the spirit of obsession he carried. "You're not being stalked by a man anymore," she said. "You're haunted by an idea. That you'll never be alone again." She warned him that this wasn't just about physical space, it was spiritual possession through psychological dominance. A terrifying concept rooted in dark folklore. That night, Ben dreamed of his apartment collapsing inward, walls dripping with Polaroids, each one screaming. He woke up covered in soot, coughing, only to find his bedroom filled with copies of that first photo, him sleeping. Dorsey watching. It was no longer just a paranormal encounter. It had become a living curse. A haunted tale that played out like a scary animation, frame by frame, night by night. Now, Ben lives off the grid. No address. No internet. He sleeps in motels, never the same one twice. But the cookie tins still find him. And each one is a reminder, he may have escaped the basement. But the landlord never left. These true scary horror stories weren't about demons or monsters hiding in the woods. They were about the people we live beside. People who smile, wave, and wait. From haunted tales to urban legends, from sleep stories to ghost stories, the scariest thing isn't what's behind you. It's who's next door. If these creepy stories gave you chills, like and subscribe. Share this video with someone who always trusted their neighbors a little too much. Because you never really know who lives next door. Until it's too late. Stay safe. And keep the lights on.